clubpod.co, clubpod.co, clubpod.co. Okay.
Hi folks, this is another one of these podcast things for podcasters for clubpod.co. That's club, so I can't even say the words now. Clubpod.co. And again, I've no association with anyone else who call themselves, or any groups that go around calling themselves Club Pod. Now, today I'm just going to cover the basics. I mean, this is pure basics of marketing your podcast. I'll go into detail about other bits later. I'm just eating something that's gone down the wrong way. Now, these are real basics. I mean, I see a lot of people do marketing posts. Often they've never experienced it, they just make it up. But a lot of this is basic, very, very basic. Although some things I think you might not have thought of. Now, before we start, and it's important, if you've got a dull show that's not interesting, it doesn't matter how much marketing, it's throw millions of pounds at it doesn't mean it's going to be a success. And sometimes you get a lot of people who've got big egos who can never grasp that fact that they're producing something very few people want or are interested in. And when I'm listening people talk about this new exciting podcast they're setting up, a lot sound dull. I won't even bother listening to. For instance, I was listening to somebody who wanted to set up one aimed at the youth apparently, and to inspire them with inspirational people. Well, yeah, this woke nonsense is in fantasy land that you might think works, but it doesn't. It's not a big popular thing. But you never know, it might sell. I don't want to say something's not going to sell, but people pretend to be woke when they're not interested. It's the buzz thing. No one wants to. I always say this. The thing about woke these days is that it's a bit like the Emperor's New Clothes. No one's really interested in this thing, because most people are politically correct anyway. You don't need to push it down them, but they get bored listening to being lectured, and it's failed every time. But people don't want to admit that they're not interested. A bit like, I'll give you the greatest example was the remake of Ghostbusters. I'm saying a lot. I'm half asleep today. Now, actually, I was looking forward to that film, the new one. I wasn't bothered it was women. I actually thought it was a shame they didn't come out with some different location, but I looked forward to it, and it was awful because they just made it woke. You had 4 people who really didn't seem interested in being in the film. On their own, they had talent. I mean, there's one of those women I think's hysterical, but she wasn't given anything in this, and they just looked fed up. No one looked interested. But it was all wokish and all ugh. And in fact, when it came out, I always remember a lot of the woke people were saying it was marvellous. And then it came on TV. God, it was the dullest thing I've ever watched. It was awful. So I take it with a pinch of salt, wokeness. If you want to go down the woke line, and I warn people, it's not going to be as successful as you think. The amount of people interested in this thing is just ugh. But that's just by the by. That's a little bit of marketing. I mean, I always say, avoid woke. It's dull. Now, if you think you're going to get a bunch of teenagers wanting to listen to people tell each other how inspired... I mean, let's put it this way. In the last podcast for Meghan Markle, apparently, with even all the hype, this was a woke thing everyone said. I mean, I listened to it, and it was very well presented. I'm going to say that. The show they did was superb. I mean, they've got obviously a team. But it was just everybody going, oh, how inspirational, all that gumph. Which I'm going to say, just as boring as anything. And it didn't do great. It didn't. I think a Wales podcast was more popular than this. So, if they can't do it, I mean, I've not seen anything woke yet succeed. But if you think you can do it, fair enough. But I'm always going to say this: avoid wokeness. So, and be careful with the ego. You may have a podcast that isn't going to be as good as you think, and there might be things that need doing. It might be that you just need to change the volume, or it's how you recorded it, or whatever. I mean, you have to be honest. And in reality, it's like a business. Oh, in fact, this is lesson 1 in marketing. One of the things about people who succeed in business is they're prepared to try a business, and if it doesn't work, accept it and relaunch a new one. And they might do that many times. A lot of people who aren't successful, who aren't real business people, they start something and that's it. It doesn't matter if it's a disaster, they'll just carry on and they'll believe that tomorrow it'll work. They just don't learn from mistakes. Learn from your mistakes. I've set up several podcasts. The one I'm doing now seems to be working. Not this one, this is just a bit of tat. I'm just doing just for filling time. But the one I've got seems to be doing okay. It's nowhere near, it's only just started. And I know I'm going to have to keep working at it. And there's a lot of things, even what I'm doing, I know because of this lockdown is limited me. But I've got an idea and it seems to be working, but I've set up several and I'm just, to be honest, got bored with them. No one interested. I know I wasn't interested. So if it doesn't work, don't be embarrassed. Just restart. Shut it down and do something else. So maybe you've tried it and you're thinking, it's boring now. So successful people, and I've read, if you ever look at, I mean, I'm not a book reader, but once I just sit in the library and I just looked, because I had nothing else to do, I was looking out of interest in some of these ones that set up businesses, and you'd be amazed how many will sit there and they'll say, well, we set up this, that and the other and it failed. But now they're setting up businesses, and I mean, look at Google. They had Google, was it Google Plus? Failed. They just took it on the nose and carried on. And I think they've done a few others, and that's life, and they've got millions of pounds. So don't ever feel that it's a failure to fail. It's not, it's a learning thing. It's almost better to fail in some ways because you'll learn so much from it than if you succeed and then refuse to change, if you see what I mean. Failing is actually one of the greatest learning things you can do. Just keep at it. So now I've said that, let's go through a lot. Now the most simplest way to start is to have a website. I always say this, have a website. You can use that as your hub. So you can post, you see, the way I do it is just, it doesn't cost a lot, just get a domain name, try and get a .com or .co, something high level like that. .net, .org, they're not as easy to remember. I mean, you can still they can be successful, but try and go for the .com and keep it short. So, I mean, I've seen people who say that they're marketing professionals and their website is like, it goes on for miles. It's like so-and-so's marketing in USA, blah 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 .com, and he's thinking, God, that's not easy to remember. Well, if you have something simple, I mean, the ideal is a single word, which is going to be virtually impossible, but you never know. So, I mean, one of the good ones is, I mean, you could argue it's 2 words combined, but it's still not a bad name. Is house, Clubhouse, or whatever it is. Although they don't own Clubhouse, I mean, that to me is a mistake. They don't own it, but they do have a simple web page. And what you do there is then you can, one thing with WordPress, you can post on your blog post every time you do a podcast, you can embed. But you'll see most of the sites allow you to do it. You can embed the code. It's just a snippet. You paste that into. Someone just phoned me. You paste that into your blog post, and then you could leave it as that if you want. I mean, I sometimes do just that. Or you could then write a bit of text, like if you see what I'm doing at the moment, I had some text underneath. And you could add pictures and all sorts. So if you were shooting in a studio and you wasn't filming it, we'll talk about filming later, but if you were, say, filming it, fine. But you could take some pictures, say if you've got some guests, and add that. Now, the key is just to keep it nice and clean looking. I've seen even so-called professionals do blog posts and it's a real mess. It's not easy on the eye. It has to be easy on the eye and easy to read. Not too much text and not too little. Too much, I've seen people just rabbit on tons of drivel that's unnecessary and meaningless. But that's the first thing. And then what you can do then is you can link to, presuming you've got your podcast on one main site, and then that site will automatically post it to others. You should have a link for all them, so like Apple or whatever. So people then can, if they just use, some people might just use the Apple app or another app. It gives people a chance then to, if that's all they're using, to use that. Now the second one is, I'm just going to put the dogs in the lead, is you'll hear a lot about what they call SEO, search engine optimization, I believe it is. Now, some people are still keen on that. To be perfectly honest, these days I don't give a rat's ass about it. Which surprises a lot of people, but it's not something I've bothered about for years, because I think, well, first of all, it used to be I could put a site in Google and it hit number one spot guaranteed. I mean, that wasn't even any Wally could do that with just a few little tricks. But now it's, you get a site on there and it disappears, even major ones. And so, yeah, you might find some ways of getting traffic and bits from it, but to be perfectly honest, the effort I see people put in, I'm not convinced. It might work for others, I might be completely wrong on that, but it's something. Oh, someone in the background. It's almost something that it was relevant 10 years ago, but nowadays, who cares? And the reality is think about it. I suspect most people don't use Google as much as they did anyway. So that's the advantage of doing something like your own website with text. It should still hopefully rank a bit, and if it doesn't, to be honest, I won't bother. I'm just going to be walking past somebody, so we're near a road at the moment. I'm hoping there's not going to be as many around. I'm trying to do it now while it's quiet. The other side it gets busy. Oops, give up! No! No! Give up! Give up! Stop being naughty. Sorry. Come on, stop being naughty. So I say, I mean, I might do a subject on SEO, and there are things you can still do, especially with a WordPress blog. But I'll be honest, I never give a rat's ass about traffic from Google anymore, because it just seems irrelevant these days. Now, the next bit of marketing is simple. You probably all know it. Is the old social media. Twitter, Instagram, basically everything. Join them all. Every single one. And what you want to do is try and get the same username for everything. It may not always be possible, but if you can, it just looks nicer. So I've tried to go for Club Pod on everything. Now I haven't managed to do it, but then rather than doing Club Pod 12479 or something like that, I did Club and one of them, I think it was Club Pod for You. Just to me, it looks okay. You might not like it. I did it because I do it a few times if I can't get things. It just, to me, doesn't look as bad as, say, 1, 2, 3, 4. There's a few things you can, if you play about, you might find something. Or you could have club, like, if I was doing it, you could have, say, Club Pod Show, or Club Pod Live, or Club Pod something else, or even The Club Pod, or Love Club Pod. You see, you can do sort of variations, and it still looks nice to me, rather than saying Club Pod 1, 2, 3, 4, 7 or something, which is what a lot of people do. And it's easy to remember, just as I say, because you want to put this on your site and bits and bobs. Now, at these days, the problem with social media is you can lose your account at any time. So there's nothing worse than building up, say, 100,000 followers and then waking up and finding your account's gone. But be prepared for that, because it can happen. Sometimes it's worth having backup accounts and sending people to that as well, saying, can you use both? I've got the backup account. Oh, if your main one goes, hopefully the active people will still be active. It'll be less hassle getting them all back. But yeah, try all the social medias and learn as much about them as you can. I mean, the big companies, they employ people to do it, and such as the OnlyFans girls, where you might hear people making 90, 100, maybe £1 million a month doing OnlyFans. But what you don't hear is they actually have a team behind them often to answer, because they can't be answering all the people contacting them and doing all the work. Hang on, I'm just walking past. And if your podcast takes off, you might do the same thing. You might have somebody just to run the social media side and bits and bobs. Because one of the things you'll find is just doing a simple podcast can take the whole day to edit and faff about. Especially if you're doing, I mean, I'm doing it quick and it still takes ages. You have to really sit down. I mean, on my other, especially when I'm chatting to people, I like to listen to everything, because, so if I'm doing an hour show, let's say I'm doing an hour, half an hour, I'm then listening to the whole show just to make sure that no one said anything maybe that could be considered slanderous in any way or embarrass the person. So if they mention something without me noticing where they live, I always remove that, bleep it out, just for the safety. There's things like that, and even if they mention something, I sometimes delete things just because, well, you know, if they mention a product, why give a firm fee publicity? Things like that. I mean, and there might be the bits of noise you want to remove. There's tons of things you can do, and you can be boosting sound and all sorts. So it's how you want to do it. So, hang on, I've got much track. So we're talking about social media. So that's, go on and get. Oh, by the way, you see, one of the things, if you're smart, you can link. Some people say it's a good idea, some don't. I do it. Or you could do it manually. I have it so whenever I make a post on Wordpress, on my website, which is hosted by Wordpress, it automatically posts a link on Twitter and any other thing. So, oh, and the other one is set up Facebook as well. Now, I mention Facebook because bizarrely I don't use, well, it's not bizarre, I hate the site, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't use it. I mean, I don't have an account on there. It's the one thing I never bother with. I just can't be bothered with it, which I know is foolish. By the way, that's me. talking about marketing when probably the biggest market could be on Facebook, and I'm just not bothering, but I just can't be bothered. But the beauty is you can set up your site to post, and it'll post Twitter, Facebook and everywhere, which means you don't have to keep logging in all the time. Some would argue, if you got the time, you do it manually, because you can probably do it a lot better if you do it manually than not. But to be honest, it's just laziness. I do it. If it doesn't work for you, you've got these things as things you've got to work out if they're best for you or not. I'm just a bit lazy. I like things done automatic rather than doing anything. It's nice just to post it and I forget about all the others. Now, and the other ones, there's some you see in the old days, some of these were better than others. I used to be a fan of Tumblr years ago, and he got taken. I'm not exactly sure what happened. They went in a silly mode and seemed to kick a lot of people off, and what used to be great isn't. I like Tumblr as a format. It should be massive, but I think people have just moved away. But see, it's good because it's like a blog. You can post on it, pictures and videos. I think you might be able to do just sound only, so you might be able to post. Someone's walking past. Hang on, I'll just have to be careful. Here we go. I'm walking near the road anyway. I think people think I'm on their phone. Hang on. Just walking past. Oh, they're going the other way. Makes life easier. I think they're going up there. Yeah, we're in the hiking gear. Just to walk through the local woods. Let's see. There we go. So, use all the social medias. There was a woman the other day, I don't know if she was having us on, but she claimed, look at this mic's spinning around, so I don't know if it's working. She claimed that she got a huge amount of hits from Pinterest, which surprised me, because you can link to your blog, you can link to your podcast or blog post on that. So it worked for her. Again, Pinterest used to be like a big major site for me, but it bores me now. But there are tons of these sites, and I'd always go on them and just get an account. You don't even have to, even if you never use them again, it just means you've got the account, and you can usually put a link to your website on. And that's what I do a lot. I set the account up, put a link to the website. It usually takes maybe a few minutes to do. Some a bit fiddly because you've got to put a bit of code on your site to confirm you own the site. So you do that with Pinterest. But then you see you can then just go up, and if people come across you on there, hopefully that, even if it's just one or two hits to your site, it can be just worth it for that alone. Now, and plus you see the beauty is if you do it, others can't take the name. So that's the social media. As I say, I'm just doing this briefly. Now I'm going to come on to the one that you never seem to hear anybody mention ever, and it's fairly obvious. This is why you keep, when you read posts from so-called experts in marketing and all this, they don't know what they're doing, because they never mention the most obvious form of marketing going. And it's quite simple, and when you think about it, it'll just go boom. Now, a lot of people listen to podcasts as they're going to work, so the most obvious thing you could ever do, and it'll get you views, is if you've got a website, put that on your car. So whatever I see some people use the Facebook thing, and it'll be like Facebook. So that's a lot harder to remember, and to me it's not as brandable or as good. You can do that, but I always prefer just to have the main your main site, because that's your hub. And obviously you've got all your links. You should have all your links on your website. Now, why have it on your car? Well, the most obvious thing is, if you're driving around, you could have hundreds of people in even just half an hour seeing your car. And these days, people they've got the phone in the car. If they go on it, they can just, to be honest, I don't use it myself, never have done. But they can, as everyone's got phones connected, even if they've just got the phone in their pocket, they can just take it out and say Siri and go onto your website. And if they're listening to it, you see, you've got the captive audience. Because if you've got a nice, interesting show, and obviously it's not going to suit everybody going to work and back, but let's say you do a bit of a comedy show, something light-hearted. It's something people can listen to as they're going to work or coming away. If they see it on the back of the car, or they're looking out the bus, they might be sat in the bus and read it. So you could have it on the side of your car as well. They're looking out the window. Hang on, I'm just going to cross the road. Here we go. Again, but it was professional. I've been editing all this out. But too lazy. Way too lazy. I don't know if this is recording anyway. I'll probably find out and press record when I get home. Let's just see. I'm just crossing over. Oh dear. I mean, we're in this lockdown. You can tell everyone's at work. It's nonsense. By the way, a little bit of just data. If you're in the UK, I don't know why we're all pretending we're in lockdown, because listen to this. This is as busy as it ever was. Everyone's still going to work. It's just a few middle class people who have managed to get to work from home. Everyone else has to go to work. So we're all pretending we're in this lockdown, and yet everyone's coming back and forwards. I mean, it's just nonsense. I listened to a woman the other day who was going on about she hadn't seen her mum for years, for almost a year, her elderly mum. And you're thinking, sod that. I'd have gone to see her. Because she could die and she's never met her for a year. And yet, here we are with everyone going out. Totally ridiculous. Oh dear. There's going to be more people committing suicide, I suspect, than will have ever died from this virus. I think it's wrecked kids' lives. It's just wrecked people's lives. Anyway, by the way, as I'm thinking about it, and I've said this to a few people, you might find you're going to know somebody who's committed suicide, because as this goes on, I mean, in the UK they're artificially paying people, but that'll come to an end at some point. And at that point, people are just going to lose jobs. I mean, shops are going to be closing like crazy. If you're in the UK, I mean, this is completely off subject, but I can't see people shopping or going back like they used to. Most of the major shops seem to now be shutting down. They've closed them. And they're the ones that attract people. So the shops nearby used to... there's a system in business, God, this has gone way off podcasting, where the main shops, you have a main shop where people go to, and that feeds the shops around them. So in the sorts of... what's that? It's a brick. So if you've got like a shopping centre, or a mall, I think they might call them in America, you'll have maybe one or two major shops, and they'll attract the bulk of the customers, and from then on people will wander into other shops. Oh, here we go, some more people. Well, in the UK, most of these major shops are now shut permanently, so the other shops will just simply not do anything. Hang on. Hi. Holy crap. Sorry, I just swore then. Oh dear. Yeah, sorry about that. I just walked past some lads that looked like students, but one looked like us. Have you ever seen Lost Boys, a film? It looked like he dressed like that. It looked very 1980s. Sorry, I've not seen him look like that for years. Anyway, so, but okay, I'm going to predict that, like pubs, people aren't going to go out. They're going to be scared because a lot of people now, they've got used to being at home. I can see the fear in their eyes, and I can see people even at years to come just wearing masks. I might do a little talk on this. The trouble is you end up getting bluted off YouTube when you talk stuff like this, even if you're telling the facts. And if, by the way, just to make it clear, you're not going to die if you're under 80 with no health problems. The chance of you dying is next to nothing. So if you're one of these people that are running around in fear and doubt, I mean, I see people wear these non-medical grade masks. They're non-medical, they actually do very little. They're just pretense. If you want medical grade masks, there should be N95 grade or better. And a few countries are now saying that these non-medical grade masks are doing no good. So anyway, that's just a bye-bye. I mean, I don't go along with this fear. God, last year was just so depressing. And if you're a nut job and don't think this virus is real, of course it's real. It's just, it ain't the most deadly thing going. You know, I mean, in the UK, people are now dying because they're not getting cancer treatment. Children are committing suicide. I think in America, I heard, I don't know if it's true, in Las Vegas, I think it was Las Vegas, the schools had to open because kids were committing suicide. But anyway, that's going way off subject. I sometimes do that. So I'm going to talk, as I was saying, put your domain name on your car or van or whatever, because you're going to get seen. And that's one of the best ways, especially for podcasts, to get listeners. So that leaves, I think I've covered the bulk of how I'd promote your podcast. I mean, I've seen people do rubbish marketing for people and wanting thousands. Most of these things you can do yourself, to be honest. And doing it yourself, actually, there's an advantage. You learn. You want to learn this stuff yourself, not rely on others. I mean, obviously, once you've got big, you won't have time. You probably want to employ. But the advantage is, and there is an advantage of doing it now, is that once you start, if you do get employing people, you know if they're incompetent or not, because you'll have had an idea yourself of doing it. Well, if I've seen people think X, Y, and Z's possible, and I've had it myself. People have said, "Oh, why haven't you done this, that, and the other?" And you're going, "Well, it's impossible. You're living in fantasy land." Just because they want X, Y, and Z to happen. Because everybody wants to be number one podcast. Well, if you've got 1 million people doing podcasts and 1 million people are paying the firms to get, obviously not 1 million people are doing that, but this is my example. No, you can only have one person number one. Oh, there we go. Oops. Oh dear. Sorry, the Lost Boys have come back. No, they must have gone the wrong way. God, they were weird looking. They've got this weird fluffy white hair tucked up, it's bizarre. They're all wearing black leather jackets and jeans. I think they're a bit geeky looking. I think they're types that sort of play board games, if you see what I mean, you know, them Dungeons and Dragons things. Anyway, let's get back to, we're covering, like I say, we're just doing the basics here. So the final one is word of mouth. And you might think, oh, but in reality, what you want to do is have people on your website. This is the advantage of on your website, and I'll go through this in detail. You can set it up. I do this on every single site I've ever done. A bit of code. It's simple to add. It's a plugin on your site where you'll see the Twitter, Facebook, and all these little symbols. You've probably seen them. Well, you will have done. Symbols on every site going. Well, not every site, but a lot of sites will have them. And it's where people can press a button and it'll automatically tweet that page to their Twitter feed. And that's what I mean by word of mouth, because if they like it, that's the easy. This is why I don't bother with SEO, because you only need somebody who's got, say, 100,000 followers. Let's say, it might happen. Let's say you do a brilliant podcast. Maybe you do a comedy podcast, and you post the link on your blog where maybe they had nice pictures and stuff. And a really famous comedian comes along, and he or she likes you, listens to the podcast and likes it. All they have to do is just press that little button and fire it to they might even fire it to everything if you're lucky. But let's say they retweet it or press I don't know what you call, not retweet, but they post it to Facebook by doing the same thing. Again, they're not having to copy and paste any code. They can do this on their phone, anywhere. I'm just sorry, there's a dog on the other side. I'm just making sure he's not lost. I always like to make sure dogs aren't lost. I know there's one there. Oh. Okay, folks, I'll better edit that. I'll just chat to somebody then. What am I up to? Oh yeah, this code. Now, as I was saying, this is the advantage of, and this is the most simple way of getting traffic, is you put this code on, and if you can ask just a few people, just to do a retweet or something, God, that's going to get you so many. And you see the advantage is, once they retweeted it to, let's say they've got 60,000 followers, I mean that'd be like nice. The chances are they've probably got a couple of hundred. Some of them people will then retweet that tweet. So you can have people retweeting for months. I mean, I've seen retweets from going back years. People still retweeting. And, by the way, that's another little tip. Things like you can post on Twitter. I think it's now a 2-minute, 10-minute video. And Instagram used to be a minute, but you can do. It looks like now you can upload up to 15 minutes of video, a bit like YouTube on there. And TikTok, that's, I think, it's a minute. So what you can do is you can do samples from your show. There's a few websites that let you do it. They'll take the audio and do the artwork. You'll have seen it where you've got the when people speaking, it's got the little lines bouncing all over. But you can edit yourself just using a basic video software. Just to use your picture of something, and then just put the audio. So you've got to remember to just cut it down to however long you're allowed to post on these formats. So if you're doing a podcast, say half an hour, you can split that into 2 15-minute bits and stick it on Instagram. That's what I do. You don't need to, and that way people want to listen. I mean, it might not work for you, that, but it just means people don't always have to listen to the podcast. They can listen to it on Instagram or whatever. Or it's a sample. If they like what they hear, they'll go listen to the full thing. So that's it. I mean, like I said, just if you can get people to retweet your post, you're laughing. Alright then, bye. I think that'll do for now. Let's see if it's recorded. I'm just going to have a quick look. Hang on, let's just turn it off. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, I've recorded that. So, ciao, and like I say, clubpod.co. Bye.
Clubpod.co. Clubpod.co. Clubpod.co.